G'day, it's fugitive Australian journalist Shane Dowling from the website kangaroocourtofaustralia.com. Now, you're about to see Kathryn Campbell's Robodebt lies. In her own words, she's called out on video. Now, the video's in 3 sections. The first section is where Kathryn Campbell's giving a speech at IPA, the Institute of Public Administration, Australia, in September 2018, where she's making jokes. She makes a joke about Robodebt. If people don't know what it means, she explains what it means. Now, that's in September 2018. And in the second section, well, that's where she's giving evidence at the Senate hearing in 2020. Now, it's very important to know that Scott Morrison was made Prime Minister in August 2018. So in the first section of the IPA or IPAA, Kathryn Campbell, when she's given that speech, Scott Morrison had just been made Prime Minister. And in the second section of the Senate hearing in 2020, Scott Morrison is Prime Minister. And Kathryn Campbell's attitude at the Senate hearing in 2020 is very arrogant. She tries to make out she doesn't know what Robodebt is. And she's very aggressive in responding to the Senate questions. And that's because she knows she can do whatever she wants. Scott Morrison's Prime Minister. No one's going to do anything. And she's basically ignorant and rude as far as I could see. But in the third section, that's March 2023, this year, when she's giving evidence at the Robodebt Royal Commission. I think she gave evidence 2 or 3 times, but this was the last time in March 2023. And she's very sombre and she's making admissions. She knows she's in a lot of trouble. So watch the video and you can see Kathryn Campbell lying in her own words.
Rolled out the online compliance initiative, which went on to be known as Robodebt, for those of you who don't know. We didn't do quite as much co-design as we should have, and that became apparent quickly. So for anyone who had actually left the country in January of 2017, I'll give you an outline of what OCI was meant to do. So the intent of the policy was to match information that a recipient of a welfare payment had been giving the tax office with what they'd been telling Centrelink, basically. And where there was a mismatch, which would lead to a debt in the social security framework, a letter would be sent saying, we've identified a mismatch, could you help us out and tell us why there's a mismatch? So the intent was for people to engage right up front and say, this is why, or actually, maybe I've got a debt. What happened was a number of the letters went out and people didn't either receive the letters or respond to the letters. And the first they heard about it was when the debt collector rocked up to ask them to repay the debt. So this happened in early January of 2017. That's another lesson. Try not to roll things out in January because there is not much other media going on and you find yourself intent on that's the only headline in town. I kept thinking, where are those cricketers when you need them doing something naughty? But they were well behaved that year, and so we ran the media.
Future of Robodebt, is it, dead, cremated and buried, or is it likely to rise from the dead and come back in some form?
So, Senator, I think what you mean by Robodebt is compliance per se. Is that what you mean by Robodebt?
No, I think everybody pretty well understands what Robodebt is. The only term that we've used today that no one understands or is questioning is what legal insufficiency. Robodebt's Robodebt. We know what that is. Readmission at this point.
Because in the context of the question, can I just finish?
No. Well, answer the question instead of playing these word games. It's Senator a word game play.
She's trying.
People have died over Robodebt and you don't even acknowledge the
Chair,
word.
I do not accept those assertions that are being made. They are not correct.
Your staff have
This
said
is
it.
difficult. It's alleged that the staff, these are staff, this was a letter from the union, we accept that, we've talked about that, but I do not think it's appropriate that, no, I do not accept people have died over Robodebt.
You do not?
I do not accept
Well, I'm
that.
sure the families of those who died and committed suicide will be very, very unhappy with your answer today.
We know that suicide is a very difficult subject. We know mental health issues are very difficult. We do not accept that. We have apologised for the hurt and harm, but none of us can imagine what goes on in individuals' lives. So I do not accept that.
And Cabinet was not informed about the change involving the transfer of the onus from Centrelink to investigate whether a debt existed with employers.
Yes.
Yes, I didn't mean to make it broadly in terms of what was said orally at the Cabinet. Mm-hmm. By this document, Cabinet was not informed of the change in the transfer of the onus.
No.
And by this document, Cabinet was not informed of the change to the treatment of ATO data by its use of averaging.
No.
And as you previously said, those are two substantial changes in the proposal.
Yes.
And you must agree with me then that this document, in its assertion that the new approach would not change how income is assessed or overpayments are calculated, misled Cabinet to that extent.
To the extent recipients did not engage, yes.
Well, to the extent that it didn't identify that the change involved a change to the assessment of the calculation of income by reference to averaging, you would agree it was misleading to that extent?
I agree it was misleading to the extent that if the recipient did not engage, yes.
But it was a change even if the recipient did engage, because previously a departmental officer would have gone through the file and contacted employers to determine income, to assess income, and that was not going to happen anymore. So even for the person who engaged, it was a change in how income was determined.
If the recipient had engaged, they could have provided that information and that would have been taken into consideration.
Yes, but now you were requiring them to provide it and making no other inquiry. So there was no recourse to employers' records as there had been in the past.
My recollection is that we did change that in 2017 when we had...
But that's avoiding the question, which is that there was a change as at 2015, even for recipients who engaged, as to how you would determine what their income had been.
Yes.
Okay.
And to that extent then, this document was misleading in its assertion things had not changed.
Yes.
When you prepared for the Expenditure Review Committee and you were provided with this aspect of the DSS portfolio budget submission, did you notice the assertion then that was inconsistent with what had been provided in previous briefings to ministers?
No.
Is it your evidence that a document which was capable of misleading a subcommittee of Cabinet went unnoticed by you despite your earlier involvement in those briefings?
Yes.
And is that because you didn't pay close attention to the document?
I cannot recall why I didn't notice it.
And yet you were closely involved in the costings of the measure based on this description.
Yes.
Are you sure that there was no pressure placed on you by ministers to attend the ERC where there remained a question about the need for legislative change?
If you're asking me, was there pressure placed on me to attend the ERC and say that no legislation was required? No.
And you're saying that the drafting of this document, to the extent that it is misleading, was not the result of any pressure placed on you by ministers to progress the measure to the ERC?
No. There was no pressure.
And so do you then take responsibility for the drafting of this document, which had its origins in your department?
As the Secretary, I was responsible for what happened within the department. I did not notice the change in the drafting.
And on the basis of this NPP, your department was allocated more than $200 million in funding as part of this budget measure over 4 years.
Yes.
And you continued with your involvement in the negotiation of costings following your attendance at the ERC.
Yes.
Which included being copied into or involved in drafting letters between various ministers.
Yes.
Right. Was it inadvertence then on your part that this document, capable of misleading the Cabinet, came through so many drafts before it was considered?
So many. I'm just trying to understand your question.
Commissioner, that question was a little confusing in this.
It's a significant oversight on your part, isn't it?
Yes.
Another view of the way in which it arrived does not involve inadvertence. It involves a considered decision by your department to change language without changing substance, so as to avoid the need to identify legislative change was required to introduce the measure. What do you say to that?
I do not agree with that.
Now, Kathryn Campbell has been suspended without pay. And I did a video on it a couple of days ago on the 20th of July. The video is titled Anthony Albanese flags sacking Robodebt fraudster Kathryn Campbell to keep the peasants happy. Now, she was suspended apparently 3 days after the Robodebt Royal Commission handed down its findings. Very critical of her, but I explained that in the video. So I'll put a link below this video on YouTube so you can watch that video as well. And I'll be publishing an article on my website, Kangaroo Court of Australia, in the next couple of days. So make sure you follow up there, or you can go there now and sign up for the free email subscription. And if you do, you'll get a confirmation email. Just click on that and you'll be notified when I publish my next article and that future articles after that. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and the notification button. And Kangaroo Court of Australia is independent media. I publish a website, YouTube channel, Facebook page and Twitter account. And I'm 100% crowdfunded from people like yourself. So please support my Patreon account. You can donate any amount, $3, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30, $40, $50, whatever suits your budget. It all helps out. And I currently have 281 patrons donating $1,697 a month. And I really need to double that to become financially viable. So please support that. And please share this video on Facebook and Twitter, etc. Thank you for your time and have a good day.